Let's be honest, negativity is exhausting. It drains your energy, clouds your thinking, and pulls you into a spiral that can feel impossible to escape. I know this because I've been there. I've had days where a single bad thought would latch onto my mind and drag me down, like a weight I couldn't shake. And let me tell you, those days felt endless. But here's the truth. Negativity doesn't have to control you. You don't have to be a prisoner to your own thoughts or to the circumstances around you. The moment I realized this, everything started to change. I didn't magically stop facing problems, but I learned how to handle them in a way that didn't wreck my peace of mind. That's what I want to share with you today. The first thing you need to know is this. Negativity isn't something that happens to you. It's a pattern, a mindset, and like any pattern, it can be broken. That's not just me talking. It's rooted in Stoic wisdom. The Stoics believed that while we can't always control what happens in life, we can absolutely control how we respond to it. And that's where your power lies. It's not in avoiding challenges or tough situations, but in deciding how much of yourself you'll let them take. I want you to think about this for a moment. How much energy have you wasted on things that didn't deserve it? Arguments with people who only wanted to provoke you, regrets over mistakes that you couldn't undo, anxiety about things that in the end didn't even matter. I've been guilty of this too, pouring my time and energy into problems instead of solutions. And each time I felt emptier. But here's the good news. It doesn't have to stay that way. Breaking free from negativity starts with small shifts, tiny steps. It's not about flipping a switch and suddenly becoming unshakable. It's about choosing moment by moment to respond differently. I've learned that the smallest changes in how you think and act can lead to the biggest transformations. And let me tell you, it's a process, but it's worth every ounce of effort. What I'm going to share with you are practical, no-nonsense strategies that have worked for me and countless others. These aren't vague feel-good concepts. They're real actions you can take to reclaim your peace, one step at a time. You're going to learn how to see challenges differently, how to guard your energy, and how to build resilience so that negativity loses its grip on you. I won't promise that it'll be easy, but I will promise this. You'll feel lighter, freer, more in control of your own life. And isn't that what we all want? To feel like we're not just surviving but thriving. That's what this is about. So let's dive in and take back the power that negativity has stolen from you. Because if I can do it, so can you. Now that we've set the foundation, let's dive into one of the most transformative skills you can develop, reframing your thoughts. It's not just about thinking positively or slapping a smile on when things are tough. No. This is deeper than that. This is about changing the way you see the world, the way you approach challenges, and most importantly, the way you talk to yourself in those moments when negativity tries to take over. I've learned that it's not the events in life that define us, but how we interpret them. And trust me, this shift can completely change your perspective on everything. I want to start with something that hit me hard when I first came across Stoic philosophy, the idea that every obstacle has something to teach us. I remember a particularly difficult time in my life when nothing seemed to go right. I was dealing with setbacks at work, misunderstandings in my relationships, and a general feeling of being stuck. It was overwhelming, and honestly, my default response was to focus on everything that was wrong. I told myself stories like, "You're not good enough, you'll never figure this out, and why does this always happen to you?" Those thoughts felt so real, so true at the time, but the more I fed into them, the worse I felt. It wasn't until I stumbled upon a quote by Marcus Aurelius that everything shifted. The impediment to action advances action. What stands in the way becomes the way. At first, I didn't understand what it meant, but then it clicked. My challenges weren't just there to frustrate me, They were opportunities. Opportunities to learn, to grow, and to approach life differently. I decided to put this idea into practice. Instead of asking, "Why me?" I started asking, "What's the lesson here?" When a project I was deeply invested in failed, I resisted the urge to spiral into self-doubt. Instead, I sat with the discomfort and asked myself what I could take from the experience. What I realized was that I had rushed through the planning process, ignoring red flags, because I was too focused on the end result. That failure taught me the value of slowing down, of paying attention to details, and of seeking feedback earlier in the process. It wasn't easy to admit, but it was necessary. The power of reframing lies in its ability to shift your perspective without denying the reality of your situation. It's not about pretending everything is fine when it's not. It's about choosing to see things in a way that empowers you instead of holding you back. For example, when someone criticizes you, it's easy to take it personally and let it hurt you. But what if you reframed it as an opportunity to grow? What if, instead of seeing the criticism as an attack, you saw it as feedback that could help you improve? That's the essence of reframing, taking something that feels negative and finding the hidden value in it. One of the most practical ways I've learned to reframe negative thoughts is through journaling. When I catch myself stuck in a loop of self-doubt or frustration, I write down exactly what I'm feeling and why. Then, I challenge myself to rewrite the narrative. For instance, if my initial thought is, "I'm terrible at this," I'll write out, "I'm learning, and this is part of the process." It sounds simple, but there's something powerful about seeing those words on paper. It's like giving myself permission to see things differently. Another strategy that's worked wonders for me is seeking perspective. When you're in the middle of a tough situation, it's easy to get tunnel vision and only focus on what's going wrong. But stepping back, whether by talking to someone you trust or even just taking a walk, can help you see the bigger picture. I remember a time when I was consumed by anxiety over a decision I had to make. It felt like the weight of the world was on my shoulders, and every option seemed like it could lead to disaster. A friend of mine asked me a simple question: "Will this matter 5 years from now?" That one question snapped me out of my spiral and reminded me to look beyond the immediate stress. Reframing isn't just about big, life-altering moments. It's equally powerful in the small, everyday frustrations. Think about the last time you were stuck in traffic or had to deal with a difficult person at work. Those moments might seem trivial, but they add up, and how you handle them shapes your overall mindset. Instead of letting them ruin your mood, you can reframe them. When I'm stuck in traffic, I remind myself that this is an opportunity to listen to a podcast or enjoy a few moments of stillness. When someone at work is being challenging, I tell myself, this is a chance to practice patience and emotional discipline. One of the hardest parts of reframing is letting go of the stories we tell ourselves about what should have happened or how things should be. I used to get so caught up in the idea of how my life was supposed to look that I missed out on appreciating where I was. But life doesn't follow a script, and that's okay. When I started focusing on what I could do with what I had, instead of dwelling on what I didn't, everything shifted. It's not about lowering your standards. It's about finding value in the journey, even when it's messy. Reframing also requires a deep level of self-awareness. You have to catch yourself in the act of negative thinking and consciously choose a different path. It's like rewiring your brain, one thought at a time. I've found mindfulness to be incredibly helpful in this process. By staying present and paying attention to my thoughts without judgment, I've been able to recognize patterns that don't serve me and replace them with ones that do. The beautiful thing about reframing is that it's not just a tool for managing negativity, it's a way to cultivate gratitude and resilience. Every time you choose to see the positive in a situation, you're strengthening your ability to handle whatever life throws at you. It's not about being naive or ignoring reality. It's about taking control of your perspective and, in turn, your life. When you start to reframe your thoughts, you'll notice a shift, not just in how you feel, but in how you show up in the world. You'll feel more empowered, more resilient, and more at peace. And the best part? This is something you can practice every single day. It's a skill that gets stronger the more you use it, and before you know it, it'll become second nature. Reframing negative thoughts into positive insights isn't about avoiding life's challenges. It's about facing them head-on with the belief that there's always something to gain, even in the hardest moments. It's about choosing to see the world not as it is, but as it could be, with opportunities for growth, learning, and transformation in every situation. And once you start seeing the world this way, there's no going back. Reframing your thoughts is like giving yourself the keys to a car you didn't even know you owned. It puts you in the driver's seat of your mindset. But here's where the real challenge begins: staying on the road without veering off course. Reframing is powerful, but if you don't have control over your reactions, negativity will still find ways to creep back in. That's where emotional discipline comes into play. It's not just about thinking differently, it's about responding differently. And trust me, this one can be a game changer if you let it. I've learned that emotional discipline isn't something that happens naturally. It takes practice. I used to think I was in control of my emotions until life threw me into situations where my initial reactions were anything but calm. A sharp comment from someone, an unexpected challenge, or even a minor inconvenience could send me into a spiral of frustration or anger. It wasn't until I started paying attention to my reactions that I realized how much power I was giving away to things and people that didn't deserve it. The first step to emotional discipline is understanding that your initial reaction is just that, a reaction. It's not the final say. It's like a reflex, quick and unfiltered, but it doesn't define you unless you let it. I've found that creating space between the event and my response is one of the most effective ways to regain control. This space might only be a few seconds, but in those seconds, everything shifts. Instead of lashing out or shutting down, I pause. I ask myself, what's the best way to handle this? That simple question often diffuses the intensity of the moment. Pausing doesn't mean suppressing how you feel. It means acknowledging your emotions without letting them dictate your actions. There's a misconception that emotional discipline means bottling everything up, but that's not true at all. In fact, one of the most liberating aspects of this practice is giving yourself permission to feel without being ruled by those feelings. When I started doing this, I noticed something incredible. I could experience anger or frustration without letting it consume me. I could choose to let it pass instead of clinging to it. A big part of mastering your reactions is learning to recognize your triggers. We all have them. Those specific situations or comments that hit a nerve and make it hard to stay composed. For me, one of my biggest triggers used to be feeling dismissed. If someone interrupted me or brushed off my ideas, it would send me into a spiral of self-doubt and irritation. But once I identified this pattern, I could approach it differently. Instead of reacting in the moment, I started preparing myself. I would remind myself that someone else's behavior doesn't define my worth, and I would choose to respond calmly, even if it meant simply walking away. Another key to emotional discipline is managing your internal dialogue. The way you talk to yourself in stressful moments can either fan the flames or calm the storm. If you tell yourself things like, "This is so unfair," or "Why does this always happen to me?" you're only adding fuel to the fire. Instead, I've learned to use calming, empowering language. When things don't go my way, I tell myself, this is temporary, or I can handle this. It might sound simple, but those words create a sense of control that helps me respond thoughtfully instead of impulsively. Breathing is another tool that has completely transformed the way I handle tough situations. It might sound basic, but deep, intentional breathing is like hitting a reset button for your emotions. When I feel myself getting worked up, I take a few slow breaths, inhaling deeply through my nose and exhaling fully through my mouth. It's amazing how something so simple can have such a profound effect. Those few breaths give me the clarity to respond from a place of calm rather than chaos. One of the hardest lessons I've learned is that not everything deserves a reaction. There's a quote by Epictetus that resonates deeply with me. It's not what happens to you, but how you react to it that matters. When I first came across those words, I didn't fully grasp their significance. But as I started practicing emotional discipline, I realized how much power there is in choosing not to react. Some situations and people are simply not worth your energy. By staying calm and composed, you're not only protecting your peace, but you're also sending a powerful message that you're in control of yourself, no matter what's happening around you. Emotional discipline also involves practicing empathy, even in moments of conflict. This doesn't mean excusing bad behavior, but it does mean trying to understand where the other person might be coming from. I've found that when I approach situations with curiosity instead of defensiveness, it's easier to stay calm. For instance, if someone snaps at me, I ask myself, what might they be going through? This shift in perspective doesn't justify their actions, but it does help me respond with understanding instead of hostility. One of the most surprising things I've discovered is that emotional discipline isn't just about controlling your reactions in the moment. It's about setting yourself up for success long before those moments happen. This means taking care of your mental and physical well-being so that you have the resilience to handle challenges calmly. For me, this looks like regular exercise, mindfulness practices, and getting enough rest. When I'm taking care of myself, it's much easier to approach life's ups and downs with a level head. Over time, I've come to see emotional discipline as a form of self-respect. It's about valuing your own peace enough to protect it, even when the world around you feels chaotic. It's about choosing to respond in ways that align with your values, rather than being pulled in every direction by external circumstances. And it's about recognizing that while you can't always control what happens, you can always control how you show up. As you start practicing emotional discipline, you'll notice something remarkable. Situations that used to feel overwhelming will start to lose their grip on you. You'll find yourself responding to challenges with clarity and confidence instead of being swept away by frustration or anger. It's not that the challenges will disappear, but your ability to navigate them will grow stronger. This process takes time and patience, but the rewards are worth it. The more you practice, the more natural it becomes, until one day you realize that emotional discipline isn't something you're trying to do. It's simply who you are. And when that happens, you'll feel a sense of freedom and control that's hard to put into words. You'll know, deep down, that no matter what life throws at you, you have the power to handle it with grace. And that is a power no one can take away from you. Emotional discipline sets the stage for clarity and control, but there's another crucial piece to the puzzle: the people around you. Even with the strongest mindset, the company you keep can either strengthen or sabotage your efforts. I've learned this the hard way. There were times when I thought my emotional struggles were purely internal, only to realize they were amplified by the negativity in my environment. Who you surround yourself with matters more than you might think. It can shape your outlook, your energy, and even the way you see yourself. The first time I truly understood this, I was stuck in a pattern of constant venting. I had people in my life who would jump at any opportunity to complain about everything: work, relationships, the weather. I thought those conversations were harmless, even bonding. But over time, I started noticing something. The more I engaged in those negative discussions, the more drained I felt. It was like a subtle fog creeping into my mindset, one complaint at a time. I realized that negativity is contagious, and the more I surrounded myself with it, the harder it was to break free from it. That realization forced me to take a hard look at my relationships. It wasn't easy, but I had to ask myself a tough question. Are the people around me lifting me up or pulling me down? For some, the answer was obvious. There were friends who genuinely cared about my well-being, who encouraged me to grow and cheered me on. But there were also people who thrived on drama or constantly brought their own negativity into every conversation. I had to make a choice: continue letting their energy shape mine, or start protecting my peace. One of the most powerful lessons I've learned is that uplifting relationships don't just happen, they're cultivated. You have to seek out people who inspire you, challenge you to be better, and bring a sense of joy and positivity into your life. For me, this started with finding like-minded individuals who shared my values. I joined groups centered around personal growth and started engaging in meaningful conversations. Over time, those connections became a source of strength, helping me stay grounded even when life felt overwhelming. Another thing I discovered is the importance of boundaries. There are some people you can't completely remove from your life, like co-workers or family members, but you can control how much access they have to your energy. When I set boundaries with the more negative influences in my life, I noticed an immediate shift. I wasn't as easily dragged into arguments or endless venting sessions. Instead, I could interact with them on my own terms, keeping the focus on neutral or positive topics. What surprised me most is how uplifting relationships aren't always about grand gestures. Sometimes it's the small moments that make the biggest difference. A friend checking in with a kind word, a colleague sharing a piece of encouragement. These little acts add up, creating a sense of support that counterbalances the negativity we encounter elsewhere. I've made it a point to express gratitude for those moments, letting people know how much their positivity means to me. It's amazing how even the act of showing appreciation can strengthen those bonds. I've also realized the value of being intentional with my time. In the past, I would spread myself thin, trying to maintain connections with everyone in my circle. But not all relationships are meant to be permanent. I started prioritizing quality over quantity, focusing on the people who genuinely added value to my life. This wasn't about cutting people off without reason. It was about being honest with myself about who I wanted to grow alongside. By doing this, I created space for deeper, more meaningful relationships. One thing that has profoundly impacted me is surrounding myself with people who challenge me in a positive way. These aren't the kind of challenges that tear you down, but the kind that push you to think differently, aim higher, and become more resilient. I once joined a group focused on creative problem solving, and being around those individuals shifted my perspective. They didn't just complain about obstacles, they looked for solutions. Their energy was contagious, and it inspired me to approach my own challenges with a similar mindset. It's not just about the people who are already in your life, it's also about the ones you invite in. When you actively seek out uplifting influences, you start to attract more of the same. I began attending events, workshops and meetups that aligned with my goals and values. The people I met there weren't just acquaintances, they became sources of inspiration. Hearing their stories and seeing their passion reminded me of what's possible when you're surrounded by the right energy. I've also learned the importance of being an uplifting influence myself. It's easy to focus on what others bring to the table, but relationships are a two-way street. When I made an effort to be more positive, to listen without judgment, and to offer support without expecting anything in return, something incredible happened. The dynamic of my relationships shifted. People started opening up more, sharing their wins and challenges, and our connections deepened. It taught me that being a source of light for others often brings that light back to you. One of the hardest truths I had to face is that some relationships, no matter how much you invest in them, won't change. There are people who cling to negativity, who aren't ready to let go of their own patterns, and that's okay. It's not your job to fix them. What is your responsibility is protecting your own peace. For me, this meant stepping back from certain relationships, even ones that had been a big part of my life. It was painful, but it was also necessary. And in the space those relationships left, new, healthier connections began to form. As I started to shift my environment, I noticed a profound change in myself. My mindset became lighter, my focus sharper, and my resilience stronger. Negativity didn't disappear overnight. It never fully does, but it became easier to navigate. The people around me reminded me of my strengths, encouraged me when I felt unsure, and celebrated my progress no matter how small. That kind of support is priceless. Choosing uplifting influences isn't about creating a perfect life free from negativity. It's about surrounding yourself with people who remind you of the good, who help you rise when things get tough, and who inspire you to keep growing. When you make those connections a priority, you're not just changing your environment, you're changing yourself. And that, more than anything, is the key to building a life where negativity no longer holds you back. Surrounding yourself with uplifting influences shifts your perspective and energy, but there's an even deeper skill that amplifies all of that work: learning to let go. This is where detachment comes in, and it's one of the hardest, yet most liberating lessons I've ever embraced. Let me be honest, detachment doesn't come naturally. We're wired to hold on to things, people, outcomes, possessions, and even our own expectations. But the tighter we cling, the more trapped we feel. Detachment isn't about not caring. It's about caring in a way that doesn't destroy your peace. I used to think that holding on tightly to what I wanted was the key to happiness. If I worked harder, pushed more, or controlled every detail, I'd finally feel secure. But what I actually found was the opposite. The more I tried to control things, the more stressed I became. Every little setback felt like a personal failure, and I was constantly chasing a sense of fulfillment that never came. It wasn't until I started exploring Stoic teachings that I realized my attachment was the problem, not the things themselves. One of the most eye-opening lessons I learned is that detachment doesn't mean apathy. It means freedom. When you're attached to something, you give it power over your emotions. If it goes well, you're elated. If it doesn't, you're devastated. But when you detach, you take that power back. You can still care deeply, but you're no longer at the mercy of the outcome. This shift changed everything for me, especially in situations where I used to feel helpless. I remember a time when I was deeply attached to a specific career goal. I poured my heart and soul into it, convinced that achieving it was the only path to success and happiness. When it didn't pan out the way I hoped, I was crushed. I spent weeks questioning my worth, replaying every step, and wondering where I went wrong. It wasn't until I stepped back and asked myself why this goal had so much control over me that I began to understand detachment. I realized that my value wasn't tied to that outcome. I could still find purpose, success, and fulfillment in other ways. Letting go of that attachment didn't mean giving up. It meant opening myself to new possibilities. One of the most practical ways I've practiced detachment is by focusing on effort instead of results. When you shift your attention to what you can control, your actions, your mindset, your attitude. You free yourself from the anxiety of trying to force outcomes. For example, instead of stressing over whether someone likes me or approves of my decisions, I focus on showing up authentically and with kindness. Whether or not they reciprocate is out of my hands, and that's okay. This mindset has brought me a sense of calm I never thought possible. Detachment also transformed the way I view possessions. Like many people, I used to find comfort in material things, buying something new to boost my mood, or holding on to items that no longer served me out of sentimentality. But over time, I noticed something. The more I accumulated, the more weighed down I felt. Letting go of physical clutter became a gateway to emotional clarity. I started asking myself, does this truly add value to my life? If the answer was no, I let it go. This process wasn't just about tidying up, it was about reclaiming my energy and focus for what truly matters. Another area where detachment made a profound difference was in my relationships. I used to believe that loving someone meant needing them to act a certain way or meet specific expectations. But that mindset only created frustration for me and for them. When I learned to detach, I realized that love isn't about control, it's about acceptance. This doesn't mean tolerating harmful behavior. It means appreciating people for who they are, not who I think they should be. This shift allowed me to experience deeper, more authentic connections, free from resentment and unrealistic demands. One of the hardest lessons in detachment is letting go of the need for external validation. I used to rely heavily on the opinions of others to feel good about myself. If someone praised me, I felt on top of the world. If they criticized me, I felt worthless. But over time, I realized that chasing approval was like trying to fill a bucket with a hole in it. No matter how much I got, it was never enough. Detachment taught me to find validation within myself, to trust my own judgment, and to stand by my values regardless of what others think. That kind of self-reliance is incredibly empowering. Practicing detachment doesn't mean you won't feel emotions. You'll still experience disappointment, sadness, or frustration. It's part of being human. But detachment gives you the tools to move through those emotions without getting stuck in them. For me, mindfulness has been a game changer in this regard. By staying present and observing my feelings without judgment, I've learned to let them flow instead of clinging to them. This practice has helped me navigate everything from professional setbacks to personal conflicts with greater ease and resilience. One of the most surprising benefits of detachment is how it enhances gratitude. When you're not clinging to outcomes or possessions, you start to appreciate what you already have. Detachment helps you see the beauty in the present moment, in the people around you, and in the simple joys of life. This shift from wanting more to valuing what is has brought me a sense of contentment I didn't know I was missing. Detachment is also about embracing impermanence. Nothing in life is permanent. Our circumstances, our relationships, even our own existence. This might sound bleak, but it's actually incredibly liberating. When you accept that everything is temporary, you stop wasting energy on trying to hold on to things that are meant to change. This perspective has helped me face transitions and losses with a sense of peace rather than resistance. It reminds me to focus on what I can do here and now, instead of clinging to what was or fearing what might be. The beauty of detachment is that it's a skill you can develop over time. It starts with small steps, pausing to reflect on why you're holding on to something, practicing gratitude for what you have, or simply reminding yourself that your worth isn't tied to external things. The more you practice, the more natural it becomes. And the freedom that comes with detachment isn't just about avoiding pain. It's about creating space for joy, growth, and a deeper sense of purpose. Letting go doesn't mean losing. It means gaining clarity, freedom, and peace. Detachment allows you to care deeply without being consumed, to strive for goals without being defined by them, and to love fully without fear of loss. It's not about shutting down or becoming indifferent. It's about embracing life with open hands, knowing that what's meant to stay will stay, and what's meant to go will leave. When you truly adopt this mindset, you'll find a strength and serenity that nothing can take away. Detachment frees you from the weight of unnecessary attachments. But what happens when life tests you in ways that feel impossible to endure? When challenges strike and negativity looms, it's resilience that becomes your greatest shield. Resilience isn't about avoiding difficulties, it's about facing them with strength and a sense of purpose. It's about standing tall when everything around you tries to pull you down. And trust me, this isn't something you're born with, it's something you build, piece by piece, experience by experience. I've faced moments in life where resilience felt out of reach. There were times when setbacks piled up so high that I didn't know how I'd get through them, whether it was losing something I cared about, facing rejection, or simply feeling overwhelmed by everything life was throwing at me. The temptation to give up was always there. But what I've learned is that resilience doesn't mean you don't feel the weight of those challenges. It means you find a way to carry them without breaking. The first step to building resilience is shifting how you view adversity. When something difficult happens, it's easy to label it as a setback or failure. But I've discovered that challenges are often opportunities in disguise. They force you to grow in ways you wouldn't have chosen on your own. I once faced a situation where a project I poured months into completely fell apart. At first, I was devastated. But as I reflected on what went wrong, I realized that the experience taught me more about problem-solving and perseverance than any success ever could. That perspective didn't erase the pain, but it gave it meaning, and that's what kept me moving forward. Resilience also requires self-awareness. You have to understand your own strengths and limitations so you can navigate tough times effectively. For me, this meant recognizing when I needed to ask for help. I used to think resilience was about handling everything on my own, but that mindset only led to burnout. When I finally started leaning on the people I trusted, friends, mentors, even professional support, I realized that resilience isn't about isolation. It's about knowing when to reach out and let others walk alongside you. One of the most practical tools for cultivating resilience is focusing on what you can control. There's so much in life that's beyond our influence, and dwelling on those things only drains your energy. I've learned to channel my focus into the actions and decisions that are within my power. For example, if I'm facing a situation that feels overwhelming, I break it down into smaller, manageable steps. By taking things one piece at a time, I regain a sense of control and momentum. Resilience also thrives on routine. When life feels chaotic, having daily practices to ground yourself can make all the difference. For me, that includes journaling, exercise, and moments of mindfulness. These habits act as anchors, reminding me that even when everything else feels uncertain, I have a foundation to lean on. They don't eliminate the challenges, but they give me the strength to face them. Another key to resilience is learning to embrace failure as part of the process. Failure used to terrify me. I saw it as a reflection of my worth or abilities. But over time, I realized that failure is simply feedback. It's not an end, it's a step forward. One of the most freeing things I've ever done is redefine what success looks like for me. Instead of tying it to specific outcomes, I've started measuring it by effort, growth, and the lessons I take away. That shift has made me more willing to take risks and less afraid of falling short. Gratitude has also played a huge role in building my resilience. When you're in the middle of a difficult situation, it's easy to focus on everything that's going wrong. But taking the time to acknowledge what's still good in your life can completely change your perspective. I've made it a habit to end each day by reflecting on 3 things I'm grateful for, no matter how small. Some days, it's as simple as a kind word from a friend or a moment of quiet. Those little reminders help me stay grounded and hopeful, even in the face of adversity. Resilience isn't just about how you respond in the moment. It's also about how you prepare yourself for the future. I've found that visualization is a powerful tool for this. By imagining how I want to handle challenging situations before they happen, I'm better equipped to stay calm and focused when they arise. It's like building a mental blueprint for resilience, so when life throws a curveball, I already know how to swing. One of the most transformative aspects of resilience is the ability to rewrite your story. When something difficult happens, it's easy to let it define you. But I've learned that you always have the power to choose how you frame your experiences. Instead of seeing myself as a victim of my circumstances, I've started viewing myself as the author of my life. That mindset shift has given me the courage to face challenges head-on and the determination to keep going, no matter what. Resilience is also about self-compassion. There have been times when I've been my own worst critic, beating myself up for not handling things better or faster. But I've come to realize that resilience isn't about perfection, it's about progress. Giving yourself grace during tough times doesn't make you weak, it makes you stronger. It allows you to learn and grow without the added weight of unnecessary guilt or shame. What I've found most inspiring about resilience is that it's contagious. When you cultivate a resilient mindset, it doesn't just benefit you, it impacts everyone around you. I've seen this in my own life, whether it's supporting a friend through a tough time or setting an example for younger family members. Resilience creates a ripple effect, showing others what's possible when you refuse to let challenges define you. Building resilience takes time, but every small step you take makes a difference. It's not about never falling, it's about always getting back up. And as you strengthen this skill, you'll start to notice something incredible. The things that used to feel impossible will begin to feel manageable. You'll approach challenges with a sense of purpose rather than dread. And most importantly, you'll realize that no matter what life throws at you, you have the strength to face it. Resilience isn't just a shield, it's a muscle, and the more you use it, the stronger it becomes. Negativity doesn't have to control your life. You now have the tools to shift your perspective, master your reactions, and create an environment that uplifts you. By reframing your thoughts, practicing emotional discipline, and surrounding yourself with positive influences, you're already building the foundation for a more resilient and peaceful mindset. Detachment frees you from unnecessary burdens, while resilience transforms challenges into opportunities for growth. These strategies aren't just abstract ideas, they're real, practical steps that I've seen work in my own life. If I can do this, so can you. Here's the truth. This journey isn't about perfection, it's about progress. You don't need to get everything right all at once. Small, consistent actions make a world of difference. The more you practice these principles, the more natural they'll become, until negativity loses its grip on your life entirely. I'd love to hear your thoughts. What resonated with you the most? Which of these strategies are you excited to try first? Drop a comment below. I read every single one, and I can't wait to see how you're applying these lessons to your own life. If you found this helpful, don't forget to hit that subscribe button and join our community. Together, we'll keep exploring ways to build a stronger, calmer, and more intentional life. Let's keep growing, one step at a time. You've got this.